My name is Camille, and the night my father called me a lowlife who'd never amount to anything, I just smiled. Because he had no idea I was already worth $45 million. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just said, "Okay, Dad. Fine." Then I walked out of the house I helped pay for with nothing but my car keys and a quiet promise to never come back. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. But before I tell you what happened that night and what I did afterward, you need to understand something. I wasn't always rich. In fact, I came from a family that pretended to be perfect. Church on Sundays, family dinners on Fridays, fake smiles for neighbors, and constant criticism behind closed doors. Growing up, I was the problem child. My sister, Laura, was the golden one, straight A student, daddy's favorite. Me? I was the one who liked to dream big. I skipped college to build my own business. And for that, my parents never forgave me. When I dropped out of college to start a digital design company, my dad, Richard, said, "You're throwing your life away, Camille. You'll be broke in a year." He laughed, while my mom, Nancy, looked away, embarrassed like my very existence was ruining her social image. Meanwhile, I worked 18-hour days in a tiny apartment, eating dollar store noodles, building something I believed in. That something turned into a design and marketing empire with celebrity clients and brand contracts worth millions. But I didn't brag. I wanted my success to speak for itself, and maybe, deep down, I still hoped they'd be proud someday. That day never came. Instead, 3 nights ago, I came home to what felt like a family intervention. My dad was sitting in his leather chair, arms crossed. Mom stood near the kitchen island. Laura was there too, with her husband Ethan, a smug tech consultant who always treated me like I was beneath him. "Camille," Dad started, voice cold, "we've been talking, and we've decided you shouldn't be part of this family anymore." At first, I thought he was joking. I laughed softly. "Excuse me? You heard me," he said. "You don't belong here. You're an embarrassment. You skipped college, you have no career, no husband, and no real purpose. You've always been the failure." I stared at them, at my own family, as if they were strangers. Laura smirked from the corner. "Dad's right, Camille. You've been living off luck for too long. Maybe it's time you grow up." That's when my father said it. "Get out of this house, you lowlife." For a few seconds, I couldn't even breathe. That word, lowlife, hit harder than anything I'd ever heard. I had paid off half their mortgage 3 years ago. I'd secretly transferred money to Mom's account when Dad's business almost went bankrupt during the pandemic. And this was how they saw me? But I didn't argue. I didn't tell them about the company, the mansion, the bank balance, or the quiet empire I'd built under their noses. Because revenge doesn't need an audience. I just said calmly, "Okay, fine." Then I walked upstairs, packed my suitcase, and left. I drove all night, through empty highways and quiet towns, until the road signs started saying Florida. My beach house sat on a private coast, hidden behind tall palms and golden sand. It was the house no one in my family knew existed. When I stepped inside, the air smelled of ocean salt and quiet peace. I dropped my bags and finally let the tears fall, not because I was sad, but because I was free. Free from their judgment. Free from the lies. Free to finally show the world what they'd thrown away. That night, I sat on the balcony, watching waves crash under the moonlight, and whispered to myself, "You called me a lowlife, Dad. Let's see how low I can go when I'm standing at the top." 3 weeks later, my phone rang. It was my sister, Laura. And that call changed everything. When I woke up the next morning, sunlight was pouring through my apartment window in Los Angeles, the one I'd lived in for years before my business took off. The place was small, but it was mine. I sat on the edge of my bed, still hearing my dad's voice echoing in my head, "Get out, you lowlife." It stung. Not because I needed his approval, but because I had spent so many years chasing it. For most of my 20s, I'd worked day and night, building my online design business from scratch. I taught myself everything: branding, marketing, web design, client communication, all of it. No college degree, no fancy connections, just my laptop and a drive that wouldn't quit. I remember sitting in my parents' garage at 23, using their old Wi-Fi and a broken desk. My mom would walk past and sigh, saying, "Camille, you're wasting your time. You need a real job." But I kept going. By the time I turned 30, I had 10 employees, a client list that included luxury hotels and celebrity brands, and annual revenue crossing $45 million. But my parents didn't know. They didn't want to know. Every time I tried to tell them I was doing well, they'd roll their eyes. "Don't lie to make yourself feel better," Dad would say. "If you were rich, you wouldn't be dressed like that." They never understood that real wealth doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. So that morning, after being kicked out, I made a decision. I was done trying to prove my worth. I packed my things in silence, my laptop, passport, and a few clothes. Everything else didn't matter. My assistant, Lauren, called just as I was locking the door. "Camille, are you okay? You didn't sound great last night." I took a deep breath.
"I've fine. Just need a break."
"I'm flying to Florida today." There was a pause. "You mean the beach house?" "Yeah," I said, smiling faintly. "It's time I finally move in." The flight from Los Angeles to Miami felt like a reset button. As the plane soared above the clouds, I stared out the window, watching the world shrink below me. Somewhere in all that chaos, the highways, the houses, the people, was my old life. The one I was leaving behind for good. When I landed, a black SUV was waiting outside the airport. My driver, Rick, holding a sign that said Ms. Camille. He'd been managing the property for months, but I'd never visited. As we drove along the coastal road, the air changed. The salty breeze, the soft hum of waves, the golden sunlight. Everything felt new, clean, and peaceful. And then I saw it, my house. A massive oceanfront glass mansion, sitting right on the sand. Blue shutters, palm trees swaying in the breeze, and a wooden deck that overlooked miles of open sea. Rick opened the door. "Welcome home, Miss Camille." Home. I'd never realized how much I needed to hear that word. I walked through the front doors and just breathed. The sound of waves filled the space. The walls were white, the furniture sleek, modern, and warm. There was a massive office overlooking the ocean, my dream workspace, ready, waiting. I walked onto the balcony, the sun setting across the horizon, and whispered to myself, "They called me a lowlife. Well, this is one hell of a life." 3 weeks passed like a dream. I'd wake up early, make coffee, and watch the sunrise from my balcony before diving into work calls with international clients. My company had just signed a contract with a global hotel chain worth $8.6 million, our biggest deal yet. Lauren came down to Florida to help me set up our new office division. "You should tell your parents," she said one afternoon, watching me review a proposal. I laughed softly.
"Why?"
"So they can find new ways to insult me."
She sighed.
"Not for them, for you. Closure, maybe." I shook my head. "I don't need closure. I need peace." But peace didn't last long. One morning, as I was finishing a Zoom call, my phone buzzed nonstop. Messages, missed calls, voicemails from an unknown number. I ignored them until a text finally came through. "Camille, it's your brother.
"Please call me."
It's about Dad." My heart froze. For a moment, I just stared at the screen, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. The same man who'd called me a lowlife 3 weeks ago suddenly needed me. I called back. "Camille," my brother's voice cracked. "Dad's in the hospital. Heart attack. They said it was bad." I went silent. My mind was spinning. Guilt, anger, sadness all tangled up. He continued. "Mom doesn't know what to do. The medical bills are already piling up. She said they might lose the house." I swallowed hard, gripping the phone tighter. "So, they need money now?" I asked. There was a pause.
"Yeah."
"Camille, please, they need help." I looked out at the ocean, the calm, endless blue waves crashing against the shore, and took a deep breath. "All right," I said softly. "I'll handle it." But deep inside, I wasn't doing it for them. I was doing it for me. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud or cruel. It's quiet, elegant, and delivered in the form of success. And mine was just getting started. I sat on the edge of my balcony that night, staring at the waves under the moonlight. The air was warm, but inside me everything felt cold. My father, the man who had screamed at me, called me names, kicked me out, was now lying in a hospital bed. And I couldn't decide whether to feel angry or heartbroken. Lauren came outside, holding 2 mugs of coffee. "You've been out here for hours," she said softly, sitting beside me. "I know," I whispered. "It's just complicated." She took a sip and looked at me. "You don't owe them anything, Camille. Not after what they did." I nodded slowly. "I know I don't owe them. But I can't just pretend I don't care. He's still my dad." I didn't sleep that night. At 5 a.m., I packed a small suitcase and booked a private jet back to my hometown. When I walked into the hospital, everything felt strange. The sterile air, the sound of machines, the smell of disinfectant. My brother Mark met me in the hallway. His eyes were tired, red from sleepless nights. "Camille," he said, almost in disbelief. "You came?" "Of course I did," I replied. He led me to the ICU. Through the glass window, I saw my father, pale, frail, lying still, tubes running across his body. My mom sat by the bedside, clutching his hand, whispering prayers. I hesitated at the door. After everything they'd said to me, part of me wanted to turn around and leave. But my heart wouldn't let me. I stepped inside. Mom looked up and froze. Her eyes widened, shock, guilt, and something else I couldn't define. "Camille," she whispered. "Hi, Mom." For a long moment, no one said anything. The only sound was the beeping of the heart monitor. Finally, she stood up, her voice trembling. You came back? I heard about Dad. How is he?" She glanced toward him. "They said it was close. He needs surgery. It's expensive," and she stopped herself, her eyes darting down. "We can't afford it." There it was. The real reason she was glad to see me. I looked at my father again. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller, weaker. This was the same man who had thrown my suitcase onto the front lawn and told me I was uneducated trash. I wanted to hate him, but all I felt was tired. I reached into my bag and took out a folder. "I already paid the hospital bill," I said quietly. "The surgery is covered. He'll get the best care possible." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "Camille, why would you do that after everything?" I took a deep breath. "Because I don't want to become like him." She covered her mouth, sobbing softly. For the next few days, I stayed in town. I handled the paperwork, arranged for private nurses, and made sure my dad had the best specialists. I didn't stay at their house. I booked a hotel suite nearby instead. Mark visited me one evening. "You know," he said, sitting across from me, "Mom's been talking about you nonstop. She keeps saying she misjudged you." I smiled faintly. "That's nice to hear." He hesitated. "Camille, they don't know about your success." "I know. Maybe it's time to tell them?" I shook my head. "Not yet. If they only respect me when they find out I'm rich, then they never respected me to begin with." A week later, Dad woke up. I walked into the room quietly, unsure what to expect. His eyes flickered open, and when he saw me, his jaw tightened. "What are you doing here?" he rasped. I stood by the bed. "Relax. I'm not here to argue." He turned his face away. "You should have stayed gone. You embarrassed this family enough." My chest tightened, but I stayed calm. "You don't have to like me, Dad. But I'm not here for your approval." "Then why come back?" he snapped. "You think I need your charity?" I looked him straight in the eyes.
No.
"I came because I still care, even when you don't."
He scoffed.
"Care? You ran off to chase your little pipe dream. You never had discipline. You never had." I cut him off, my voice trembling but firm.
No, Dad.
"You never believed in me. There's a difference." For a moment he went silent. The room felt heavy, thick with words we'd both buried for years. Finally he muttered, "You're still the same ungrateful kid." That was it. That was the moment I realized he'd never change. I walked to the door, tears burning behind my eyes. "You're right," I said softly. "I am the same kid, the one who kept going even when you said she'd fail." Then I turned and left the room. Outside, my mom was waiting. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing," I said. "He's just being himself." "Camille, he doesn't mean the things he says." I stopped her gently. "Mom, I forgave him long ago, but I won't let him hurt me again." I got into my car and drove back to the hotel. As I watched the hospital fade into the distance, one thought echoed in my mind. Sometimes, forgiveness doesn't mean staying. It means walking away with peace. And while my father was stuck in bitterness, I had something far more powerful: freedom. 2 weeks later, I was back in Florida, back to my calm ocean mornings, the rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the shore, and the quiet hum of peace I had built for myself. I had done what I came to do. My father's surgery was successful. He was recovering. And even though he'd thrown my kindness back in my face, I didn't regret helping him. But I thought that was the end of it. Then one evening my phone rang. It was my mother. Her voice was small, uncertain. "Camille," she said softly, "I know you probably don't want to talk, but your father wants to see you." I froze. "He does?"
Yes. He's home now.
He said he wants to talk. Part of me wanted to say no, to stay where I was, safe, far away from the chaos. But another part of me needed closure. Not for him.
For me.
So I flew back one last time. When I arrived, the house looked the same. Old white paint peeling, the front porch still creaking under my feet. But it didn't feel the same. I had changed. I wasn't the scared girl who left crying in the rain that night. I was a woman who had built an empire from scratch. Dad was sitting in the living room when I walked in. His face looked thinner, weaker. His pride was still there, but behind it, something else, something I'd never seen before. Regret. He cleared his throat. "Camille, sit down." I sat across from him, silent. For a moment he said nothing, just stared at the floor. Then he finally spoke. "I've been thinking about what you said, about how I never believed in you." I waited, my heart still guarded. He continued, his voice rough. "I was hard on you because I thought you'd fail. I thought you needed to be broken to survive this world. But maybe I was wrong." I didn't know how to respond. He looked up at me. "When I was in that hospital bed, I found out what you did. Your mother told me you paid for the surgery. I don't deserve that kind of forgiveness." The room went silent except for the sound of the clock ticking. "Why did you help me?" he asked quietly. "After everything?" I smiled sadly. "Because I didn't want to be like you, Dad. I didn't want hate to define me." He nodded slowly, eyes wet with tears. "You're a better person than I ever was." For the first time in my life, he sounded human. Then, in a surprising shift, Mom entered the room holding an envelope. "Camille," she said, "before you go, there's something I want to ask. Are you doing okay financially? You've been gone so long. I just worry." I almost laughed. If only she knew. I leaned back. "Yeah, Mom.
I'm fine.
More than fine." Dad frowned. "You're not still chasing that little online business, are you?" That was it. The moment I realized they still had no idea who I had become. So I stood up and said, "Actually, Dad, I didn't just chase it. I built it." He blinked. "Built it?" "Yes," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I run an international marketing and tech firm. We work with clients across 20 countries. It's worth $45 million. The room went dead silent. Mom's hand dropped the envelope.
What?
Dad's mouth opened slightly. $45 million? Yes, I said, looking right at him. That's how I paid your hospital bills. That's how I bought my Florida beach house. And that's why I didn't fight back when you threw me out, because I knew who I was, even when you didn't." He looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "I tried to make you proud," I continued, "but you made me believe I was worthless. And maybe that's why I worked so hard, to prove I wasn't." Tears rolled down my mother's cheeks. She covered her mouth. shaking her head. Oh my God. Camille. Dad leaned back in his chair, speechless. His face flushed red, his pride collapsing like a wall finally breaking. Camille, I don't know what to say, he stammered. I looked at him for a long moment. You don't need to say anything. Just remember, you once called me a lowlife. He closed his eyes, shame washing over his face. I was wrong. Yes, I said quietly. You were. I picked up my coat, ready to leave. But I'm not angry anymore. I got everything I ever wanted. Peace, success, freedom. You tried to break me, Dad, and instead you built me. He didn't say a word, just sat there, trembling, as I turned toward the door. Before walking out, I looked back one last time.
Goodbye, Dad.
Take care of yourself. Then I stepped outside, into the crisp evening air, and for the first time in my life, I felt light, truly free. When I stepped outside that night, the cold breeze hit my face, but it didn't sting. It felt clean, like the air after a storm. For years, I had dreamed of hearing my father say he was proud of me. But standing there under the pale moonlight, I realized something deeper. I didn't need his approval anymore. I got into my car and started driving toward the small town exit. The streets I once knew felt smaller now, quieter. The same houses, the same lights, but I was no longer the same girl who used to walk these roads wondering if she'd ever be enough. The drive back to the airport was silent, just the hum of the engine and the steady beat of my heart. Every mile that passed felt like shedding an old skin. When I reached Florida, the first thing I did was take off my shoes and walk barefoot on the beach. The sand was warm from the afternoon sun, and the sky above me glowed orange and pink, the same colors that had greeted me the day I first moved here. I sat down on the edge of the water and closed my eyes. It was strange. The girl who once begged her father to believe in her now ran a multi-million-dollar business. The woman who was once called uneducated trash now had employees with master's degrees working under her. And the daughter who was kicked out as a lowlife now owned properties across 3 states. But despite all that, what mattered most wasn't the money. It was the freedom. Freedom to wake up without fear. Freedom to create my own life. Freedom to love myself, even when others didn't. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from my dad. My first instinct was to throw it away, but something inside me told me to read it. The handwriting was shaky. Camille, I don't know how to start this. You were right. I was cruel, and I took my anger out on you. I thought being hard on you would make you stronger, but all it did was push you away. When you stood in that room and told me what you'd built, I felt proud and ashamed. Proud of what you've done. Ashamed that I wasn't the one who helped you get there. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope you'll remember me as a man who made mistakes, not a monster. Dad. I sat with that letter for a long time. The words didn't erase the pain, but they did something else. They closed the chapter. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because some wounds don't need more words. They just need silence, time, and peace. Months passed. Business was booming, and life felt full again. I had learned to build walls where I needed them and open doors where I could. I even started mentoring young women, girls who had been told they weren't smart enough, strong enough, or worthy enough. I wanted them to know the truth. I had learned the hard way, that sometimes the best revenge is not proving others wrong. It's proving yourself right. Because revenge doesn't have to be about destruction. It can be about transformation. One evening, I was hosting a small charity gala on my beach property. The sunset painted everything gold, and laughter filled the air. Lauren came over with a glass of champagne. You ever think about going back home? She asked. I smiled softly. I already did. But this. I gestured toward the glowing horizon, the ocean breeze, the music. This is home now. She grinned. You really turned your pain into something beautiful. I looked at her, my heart full. Pain is just power in disguise, Lauren. It's what you do with it that matters. Later that night, when everyone had left, I walked alone by the shoreline. The moon reflected perfectly on the water, and the waves whispered like old friends. I thought of that night my father called me a lowlife. The night I stood in the rain, heartbroken, wondering if I'd ever make it. And I smiled. Because that girl, the one they threw away, had become a woman who didn't just survive.
She thrived.
I picked up a seashell from the sand and tossed it into the ocean. For the girl who never gave up, I whispered. The waves took it away, just like the past. Sometimes, walking away is the most powerful revenge. Because when you stop needing their approval, you start living your truth. And that's when they finally see what they lost, not out of hate, but out of realization.